My story does not start with me. It starts with my stepfather. He moved to St Maarten when I was only 1 year old and has lived here ever since. His story mirrors that of many who have arrived without papers but made the island their home. They came undocumented and lived the life they envisioned as good, despite the hardships they faced. Bud, as everyone calls him, because of his thin frame and quick movements, was born in St Lucia, his mother's only child. She doted on him and would have done anything for him, even if it meant covering up crimes, though Bud never committed any. His life in St Lucia was sheltered, almost insulated by the protective cocoon of his mother. His cousin, however, painted a different picture. St Maarten was a land of easy money where opportunities came fast and fortunes could be made by anyone willing to work hard. Convinced by his cousin's glowing tales and with his mother's encouragement, Bud left behind his pregnant girlfriend, promising to send for her and their child once he had established himself. Bud arrived in St Maarten by boat, his heart filled with dreams of quick success and a better life. When the boat reached the port, families and friends came to pick up their loved ones, but no one came for Bud. He waited, hour after hour, growing more anxious as the sun dipped below the horizon. Finally, as darkness settled in, he had no choice but to sleep on the boat. The next day, he ventured off the port to find his cousin, the same one who had painted such a rosy picture of life in St Maarten. When Bud finally found him, he was taken to a rundown shack that he called home, its walls made of thin curtains that flapped helplessly in the breeze. Bud's bed was a makeshift mattress under a table, and the floor crawled with centipedes. As Bud lay there on that first night, he thought longingly of his own bed, back in St Lucia, of the comfort and safety he had taken for granted. It was then that he realized that easy money and good life that his cousin had promised were nothing more than a trick, a mirage designed to lure him here. But Bud was resilient. Despite the struggle of those first days and the many nights he spent avoiding centipedes, he learned to make the best of his situation. He found work as a tradesman, working jobs as a laborer, handyman, and eventually electrician. And although it was tough to find consistent jobs without documentation, he was rarely without work. His skill with wiring and tools made him sought after, not to mention his willingness to help a fellow man. Fast forward 5 years, and Bud had settled into the rhythm of life on St Maarten. He worked hard, saved his money, and dreamed of visiting his mother and child back in St Lucia. He had been giving his cousin $200 every fortnight to bank for him, believing, as his cousin had told him, that undocumented people could not open bank accounts. After 5 years, Bud had entrusted his cousin with what should have been nearly $24,000. When Bud finally requested the money to pay for his trip home, his cousin handed him a mere $250, claiming the rest had been spent on various emergencies. Well, anger and betrayal boiled within Bud, but he had no recourse. He still went to St Lucia, albeit with less than he had hoped. The bitterness towards his cousin lingered, and though he never forgave him, he chose to stay in St Maarten. Despite everything, Bud had grown to love the island, the cheap beer, the beautiful women, the reliable truck that he had managed to buy and maintain, and the constant flow of electrical work that kept his hands busy. He was able to send money home on a consistent basis to help his family. It made him proud and gave him a feeling of accomplishment. His mother could now rely on him, and his daughter did not want for anything. He had carved out a life for himself, however imperfect it was. It was during one of his annual Christmas visits to St Lucia that Bird met my mother. She had been operating a small shop for a little over a year, but it was struggling. The local economy was slow, and her customers often bought on credit they could not repay. She had borrowed money to keep the shop open, but debts continued to pile up. Bird came in one day to buy a few items, and they struck up a conversation. There was an easy warmth between them. Bird's charm and my mother's kindness drew them closer as they spent more time together over the holidays. Bird could see how much she was struggling to keep the shop afloat, and as their relationship blossomed, he offered to help out in small ways. He fixed the faulty wiring in the back room and shared some advice on cutting costs, but the shop was already too far gone. When she finally decided to close it, Bird suggested that she join him in St Maarten. There might be better opportunities there, he said, and they could start a new life together. She hesitated, torn between the desire for a fresh start and the fear of the unknown. When she told me that she was leaving St Lucia to live with Bird, I was young, but I had seen enough hardship to understand the risks of leaving everything behind. As we said our goodbyes, I pulled her aside. "Mommy, when you get there, always know where your passport is, eh?" I told her. "Keep it safe, okay? In case you need to leave quickly." She smiled at me, a sad but reassuring smile. "You don't have to worry about me, my girl. I'll be fine. And if Bird ever ill-treats you," I continued, my voice trembling slightly, "you call me right away. I'll get you a ticket to come back, even if I have to take a small loan. Don't stay there if you're not happy." "I promise," she said, hugging me tightly, "but I'm not going there to be unhappy. Bird is a good man. We'll make it work." When my mother arrived in St Maarten, it was not the dreamland Bird had once spoken of. They lived in a small apartment, pooling their resources and struggling to make ends meet. My mother took on various jobs, cleaning houses, caring for the elderly. She often talked about starting a new business, but without the proper documents, it seemed like an impossible goal. Still, she persevered. Bird worked long hours as an electrician, sometimes picking up side jobs on the weekends to bring in extra cash. Their relationship, forged in the struggle of building a life from nothing, grew stronger. There were times when Bird was sick and could not work. She did her best to pay the bills herself and made sure that he was taken care of just like he had taken care of her. Whenever they could, Bird and my mother would call me to check in, sharing stories of life on the island. I would ask if she was keeping her passport safe, and she would laugh. "Of course, girl. You made sure I'd never forget that." Over time, they built a stable life. Bird always had work, their truck was reliable, and they managed to save enough to make ends meet without having to borrow. My mother never opened another shop, but she found contentment in the life they created together, in the laughter they shared, and in the resilience they discovered within themselves. Though Bird's journey started with deceit and hardship, he found something real on St Maarten, a place where he could live freely, without fear, and with the woman he loved. And for my mother, it became a place where dreams were rebuilt, not out of grand expectations, but from the small, steady acts of daily perseverance. Their story became our story, a tale of struggle, betrayal, love, and resilience on an island where so many like them had come to seek a better life. One year after my mother moved to St Maarten, I visited to see how she was living. I was eager to see what life was on this new island. What life on this new island was really like for her. She had told me over the phone about the small apartment they shared, the long hours Bird worked, and the different odd jobs she was juggling. I could hear in her voice that things weren't easy, but she always insisted that she was happy and that Bird was taking good care of her. When I arrived, I saw the truth for myself. The apartment was modest and sparsely furnished, nothing like the home we had in St Lucia. But it was clean and cozy in its own way, and my mother's face lit up when she saw me at the airport. I could tell, despite the challenges, she was genuinely happy. There was a newfound lightness in her that I hadn't seen in a long time. It was clear that even with all the hardships, this new life had given her something she hadn't found back home. Bird was still working as an electrician, and true to his nature, he worked tirelessly. His skills kept him in constant demand, but his commitment to his work left little time for leisure. He hadn't had much of a chance to show my mother the island, and she hadn't explored much on her own either. So, during my visit, I decided we would take the time to enjoy what St. Maarten had to offer. We started by visiting the butterfly farm, a lush and magical place that felt like a world away from the hustle and bustle of daily life. My mother and I wandered through the garden, captivated by the vibrant rings of butterflies that fluttered around us. The air was warm, and there was a stillness that made it easy to forget our worries. It was the kind of peaceful moment we hadn't shared in a long time. Next, we ventured over to the French side of the island, where the atmosphere was different, older somehow, more refined. We enjoyed lunch at a quaint cafe savoring seafood dishes by the Lolos that were different from the food we knew back home. The change in culture was noticeable, but not overwhelming. The island had a way of blending different influences, creating a place where you could experience a taste of the world without ever leaving the shores. We spent our days hopping among the island's beautiful beaches, each with its own character. Mullet Bay, with its crystal clear waters and soft sand, was a favorite. We spent hours there, floating in the warm sea, letting the waves wash over us. At Great Bay, we watched the cruise ships come and go, their towering structures dwarfing the smaller boats in the harbor. The heat was intense, more so than in St. Lucia, but there was always a cooling breeze, an ice-cold bay that kept us comfortable. We explored the shops along Back Street and Front Street, where colorful displays beckoned from the windows. The streets were lively with chatter of different languages: Dutch, English, French, papiamento, taki-taki, and Spanish, all blending together in a lively hum. We browsed through boutiques filled with local crafts, jewelry, and rum, and we bought small trinkets to remember our time together. The food was another adventure. The island's multinational cuisine was a delicious surprise, offering flavors from all corners of the globe. We sampled everything we could: barbecue ribs that melted off the bone, spicy jerk chicken, savory Dutch cakes, and even sushi. There was a richness to the culture and cuisine that made every meal feel like a new discovery. The days flew by, and before I knew it, my visit came to an end. As we sat together on the beach one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, I could feel a growing reluctance to leave. St. Maarten was not like St. Lucia. It was hotter, busier, and different in many ways. But there was something captivating about the island, a unique charm that pulled at me. Perhaps it was seeing my mother's happiness, or the way Bird had built a life for them here despite the odds. Or perhaps it was simply the rhythm of the place, its diversity, its beauty, and the feeling that there was always more to discover. I returned to St. Lucia after that visit, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had left something behind on St. Maarten. I had seen firsthand that life on the island wasn't perfect, but there was opportunity, there was hope, and there was a freedom that seemed within reach. Over the next several years, I found myself thinking more and more about joining my mother there. about making a fresh start in a place where different cultures and people lived side by side. A few years later, the decision was made. I packed my bags and moved to St. Maarten, ready to embrace a new chapter alongside my mother and bird. It wasn't an easy transition. There were days when I missed the familiarity of St. Lucia, the lush green hills, and the comforts of home. But there were also days of discovery, of making new friends, working a job I did not hate, and gradually building a life on the island. Living on St. Maarten has been a lesson in resilience. It hasn't always been kind, and the hustle to make ends meet is constant. But it has been a place where dreams could be chased, where life could be built and rebuilt, no matter where you come from. Just like my mother, I found a new lightness within myself, a sense of freedom I hadn't expected, but was grateful to discover. And so, just as Bud and my mother had done before me, I made St. Maarten my home. We came with our stories of struggle, our hopes and our fears, and we added them to the many other stories of people who come from distant shores, each of us finding a new way to make a life on this island. Together, we have stitched together a tapestry here, not just as visitors or newcomers, but as a family who found a new beginning on St. Maarten.